Hello, everybody. This is Style Guides for Team Efficiency. Save time and money by making life easier. So I'm Krista Bedwin, and this is July the 14th, ou 14 juillet, as they say in France. And I'm going to tell you some tips that might help save you a lot of aggravation within your team at work, or even a community team that you might be working with. So I do suggest that while we're getting started up here, you find yourself a pencil and paper, because there may be a few things that you want to write down. This recording will also be available on the EEGS UBC YouTube channel. So you can pause to make notes then, or you can take them live now. So this is just a little introduction of me. I have, since 1999, been working mostly online as an editor and writer. So that's allowed me to travel while I was raising my son. Before that, I was a chemist and a chemistry teacher. I've also volunteered around the world, mainly with farm volunteering, lots of editing volunteering as well. The editing that I have done has been with publishers, big publishers like McGraw-Hill Ryerson, Pearson, Glencoe, government of Canada mainly, engineering companies, all kinds of scientists, environmental scientists mainly, and I've also done quite a bit of international work. So these are my contact details. I'm easy to get a hold of. You might, if you have any of my books, you'll see that Sola Rosa is my publishing imprint. I just thought it would be fun to add an extra picture, since this is the 8th webinar in this series with the Earth, Environmental, and Geographic Sciences webinars. So why would you want to bother to make a style guide? Because you may think that making a style guide costs you more time upfront. And it's true. Any procedure that you make, same with safety procedures, cost you more time to build. However, you need the safety procedure, and you know that if you make this writing procedure, is basically what a style guide is, it actually is going to save a lot of time, and it saves the time that is often spent in frustration between team members trying to figure out how to do something. So typically scientific and engineering teams particularly reinvent the wheel over and over and over again, reinvent how to do a document. What spelling are we going to use? I've heard so many long conversations about grammar rules, I can't even tell you. So this tool, the tool of making a style guide for any publishing person, would be just as essential as it is for you to have a safety guide at work. So this is worth doing. It's going to save you not just time, but hassle. So here's a little table of contents. Before we go over the table of contents, I do want to acknowledge I'm on the Mi'kmaq territory, the ancestral lands, which were not ceded, but were agreed by treaty to be shared and not ceded in the 1700s. So I'm sitting here in Nova Scotia, actually, beside the Atlantic Ocean. I'm grateful to be here, very grateful. This is our table of contents. What is a style guide? First of all, what are the components of it, and what pieces does it have? Why do we need a style guide? Where do people get their crazy ideas? Is a very interesting study. And how do we convince people, no matter where their ideas came from, to come to the same point? And what are the factors that make people not want to apply a style guide? So when you build anything, if you build a ladder, you have to convince people that they want to go up that ladder. If you build a style guide, sometimes the most difficult part of using the style guide is convincing the team to actually follow this set of rules that you develop. So let's look a little bit at that. So first of all, as with any procedure, it needs to be appropriate to the people who use it. And so a style guide is interesting because it needs to be used by the editors, obviously, but it needs to be, your life is going to be easier if everybody on the team understands what it is and why they want to follow certain basic rules. Okay, so let's start down here with our field scientists. So the field scientists are, they may be college educated, they might be university educated, they might be quite advanced people, but often they're more junior people that are collecting data in the field. It depends what kind of data you have. But the point is that they are focused on the fields. They're focused on their hiking boots and their equipment. And so they have a lot of those concerns in their head, aside from collecting really good data. But of course, we need very good and very precise data to make sure that we're going to analyze it properly. If we don't start off with quality data, of course, the project can totally go sideways. So we need those field scientists to be adhering to guidelines that make sense for everybody. The next person would be the engineer or scientist in the office who's going to crunch and analyze those numbers provided by the field scientists. And then often the engineers are helped out, and sometimes they realize how grateful they are and sometimes they don't, by the admin people on the team. So admin people on the team are often used as editors without people really giving them guidance. And maybe sometimes when they don't have the skill for that. And sometimes some admins, of course, are amazing language people and amazing formatting people. But the more solid the guidelines you give them, the easier it is for them to do their work. Now, of course, it's the job of the manager to be giving the admin those guidelines. But it's also, now we have to see there's other branches of the building, right? We have marketing and proposals people and CEOs who are kind of closer to the client. So they're trying to usually focus on client language, on sales, on making our product look really amazing. Let's not tell them about the little technical disasters. So what we need to do is make sure that these people are all married up, you know, and engineers and proposal writers are not necessarily always natural communicators with each other. And so a style guide can help people to really get together on that. So here's the big problem though. We have all these people, all very smart people, and everybody has their own idea about how things are going to be done. If you send the field scientists off into the field without training about what you want turned in, you're going to get back all kinds of stuff. Now, of course, field scientists normally head out with some kind of training, but it can vary widely depending on the managers. So a good manager would be coordinating with all of these people, making sure the client language for each project is lining up, making sure the CEO is happy with it, and so on. So what happens when people all have their own ideas is we end up with this. Everybody is going in a different direction. Now, my pet peeve right here, the one that gobsmacks me the most, is this one right here. My high school teacher. I have had so many people in the corporate environment jump up and down about what their high school teacher told them in English. So high school English teachers have this godlike status, it seems like. And the funny thing is, I've never heard anybody say my high school math teacher told me that, so I'm not going past the high school math. We all went past high school math onto university math. We needed it for the science. Well, industry writing is beyond high school, and it's also very different from university writing. If you were in a university English department, of course, it's completely opposite to how we want to write for industry. If you were a university, you may have had a university prof who was very focused on good industry, clear, plain writing. That would be unusual. Usually academic writing is more inflated than we want for client writing. Other things that get people going in different directions are managers' pet peeves. And then let's compare it. We have the manager's pet peeves. So usually, of course, we want to please our manager. We need our managers to get promotions, to get kudos, to get awarded jobs. We need to please our managers. But then, you know, sometimes we hire a new person from another company down here on the left corner, and they were given a very strict set of rules from their last manager, which is often quite different from what this manager wants. And I've seen some managers just get very stuck in the mud about small grammar rules. And I've seen a number of young engineers just tie themselves into knots trying to please everybody, and it doesn't seem like everybody has the same set of rules. Of course, the client with the money is often the one if they say that they want some kooky thing, like often it's capitalization that clients want certain capitalization, then we just go with it because you don't want conflict with your client. And, you know, final mention, elementary school teachers, we need them. They're darling and wonderful people, but they are not usually the appropriate person to quote grammar rules for. Although I will say my grade 4 teacher, Mrs. Goodwin, was amazing, and I probably did learn a lot of my grammar from her. But this is not the way we want people to operate in 100 different directions. What we want is everybody focused on the same idea. And so we need to get people to have confidence in the style guide that we build. And so I'm going to show you some resources that help people to have confidence in that style guide. So what is the purpose of the style guide? Obviously, for people to have confidence in it, they need to believe that you had super rock hard, solid reasons for why you made it. So the style guide needs to provide agreed upon advice. So that means that if you are the editor, and I've seen this happen, editors show up in a company and they say, oh, nobody is doing things right. Here's the way you should do it. And they present their own way as their own way. So people say, well, Eric, the editor wants us to do it that way. And they don't know why Eric, the editor, wants them to do it that way. So they just toss it away. They're like, well, that's what Eric thinks, but whatever, who's Eric, right? So, but if you show them, bang, 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 here's all these solid resources, which I'm about to show you, then you've got clout behind what you say. You've got some authority behind your reasons. And then people will start to agree with you. You might also want to have some team meetings, you know, to get people to agree. The purpose is also to improve the quality of the documents sent to the clients. So if you have a style guide, guaranteed you're going to be getting more consistency and you're going to be turning out better quality documents in less time, with less hours wasted on people going back and forth on bulleted lists. You know, when I asked on LinkedIn, I said, what are the top problems that you have that you need a style guide for? The answer that came back quite often is punctuation issues on bulleted lists. People will spend hours changing their colleagues' bulleted list punctuation, and then the other colleague will change it back. This is a waste of time. We should spend our time doing technical things. And if we're done the technical work, let's go for coffee instead of changing the bulleted lists. Okay, so the final point that I want to point out of the purpose of the style guide is the purpose will not be served if it's too long and ungainly. It needs to be easy to reference. So you can have an 80-page style guide. In fact, many companies do. And that's appropriate as long as it's easy to go to that table of contents and go directly to the part that you need. Somebody recently pointed out to me that they were given a style guide to follow for a project that was 30 pages long. It wasn't there was no good table of contents, and they didn't see the need to read that style guide to do the job that they had been hired to do. So that style guide was basically useless because it was impenetrable. It wasn't readable. So remember that whenever we have a purpose, we do need to make sure that that purpose is suited to the user. It needs to be user-friendly. So put some answers in the chat now about what you think the style guide needs to have. What is it that people argue the most about at your workplace? So some of the answers that come back when I ask people, or in my own experience, again, I mentioned already punctuation, grammar rules. There's a lot of argument about things like which and that. And because the company I worked at started with British guys, and British Canadian guys, and then because we're modernizing and updating, you know, language does change over 50 years. And so we don't use which as much. And for an example from Australia, whilst is still quite common in Australia, but the most recent educational book I worked on, it actually said in the style guide, we do not use whilst anymore because kids in this generation aren't understanding the word whilst. Now we say while. So little things like that are not necessarily a matter of right and wrong, but it's a matter of choosing one way and sticking to it. Otherwise, you have the first person write the document, they use whilst, second person goes through, changes it to while, third person didn't read the style guide, changes it back to whilst. It eats up unimaginable numbers of hours. Another one that is very important to me is metric and measurement. For me, it's non-negotiable that it should be, according to the Bureau International de Poids et Mesures, should be metric standard international. Sometimes, particularly with client style guides or client requests, we may, for some reason, deviate from that. I would like everybody to know where the international standard rules are to begin with. And then if we need to deviate from that, then we're going to have a good reason. Maybe it may be appropriate in a client-specific or project-specific style guide to actually write the reason. Then another thing that people can waste a lot of time on is formatting. So usually in a corporate situation, I will suggest that the formatting happens at the very end. First of all, train the people who are writing the document into the corporate template so that they don't make a mess. Second of all, people if you have it going through 6 people, only the person at the end should be formatting. We shouldn't have everybody gumping around in there, because I know with the templates at the company I worked with, you could break the template. And it was something as simple as the senior engineers making changes in the table of contents rather than making them in the headers and then properly repopulating the table of contents. So you need to know this. Most administrators will not tell the senior engineers how much work they are causing. They will just fix it. So as a senior engineer or intermediate or junior scientist, you need to go to the admins and say, can you please tell me what it is that people do to waste your time? And can you train me to not do that to you? Because so many admins work overnight and they do it and they don't complain, but that's not going to help turn out top quality for the team, right? Everybody working when they are awake and unstressed is what's going to turn out top quality. So try to be one of those people who reduces the stress. So it's the absurdly simple stuff that's not difficult to learn that you can do to save time, save stress. Okay, so a very important thing for style guides is respect and tone of voice. So in British Columbia and in Canada, using proper Indigenous terminology, proper Indigenous place names are very important. And so in the course, actually, I love the students in the course with UBC that we're doing on the style guides have taught me a lot by just how they've interacted with the Indigenous groups that they work with on job sites and in the communities where they work. And just really fantastic integration with the communities. And then there is a book called The Element of Indigenous Style. It's considered kind of the Canadian standard. It's fairly new, and unfortunately the author recently passed away. But this is a book that I think offers very good style advice. And it also is just a good read. It's just a good read as a history book. It's a really interesting book to read, and it's easy to get on Amazon even as an ebook. So your style guide should also have words to use and words to avoid. Now, what if you're going into a totally new company? Then you need to learn the language that is used by that company. So there's different ways that the company refers to itself. There may be historical ways that doesn't want to be referred to. You need to find these things out when you're entering a new company or a new client. And then, so here's an example that I really like that's from a medical style guide that I'll share the link afterwards. And this is about how to not use dehumanizing language in medical writing. So instead of saying diabetics, you would say patients with diabetes. Instead of saying HIV positives, we say patients who are HIV positive. So instead of saying, I've also heard, instead of saying wheelchair bound person, you say person in a wheelchair, and it's a temporary condition. They can still get out of the wheelchair, right? The person who has diabetes, that's not the only thing about them. It's not just that they're a diabetic, they're still a human. And so people are more and more sensitive to these kind of things now. So this is a little snapshot of a medical style guide just for a team that does medical writing. Now, if you want to know about the whole entire world of talking properly, this is so when I was first writing the course, I asked on my editor's professional list and I said, can somebody give me one page with a nice little list of all the right words? And a number of people wrote back suggesting this web page. This web page, theconsciousstyleguide.com, is a collection of many style guides. Okay, so it covers age, appearance, sexuality, ethnicity, race, health, plain language, socioeconomic status, religion. So the point is, and the point that I received very clearly is that it depends so much on what project, what population, and also it's constantly changing. And so the only real way, and which my students do so well in the UBC course, is to really talk to the people that you're writing about. But if you can't talk to the people that you're writing about, you can go onto the Conscious Style Guide, and this offers links to, I don't even know how many web pages, countless web pages about everything that you might want to write about. It guides you to find the right kind of language. So basically, when it comes to conscious language, it's about willingness to do a good job, willingness to use the right words and to be respectful. So now, what else does a style guide need? So we already discussed formatting, spelling, capitalization, client names, styles, metric, data treatment. So you might need some specific details about how you treat data. So, you know, the style guide for the geologist is going to be different for the style guide for the biologists, and definitely different to the legal department and different to the finance department. However, the punctuation of bulleted lists could be the same between all of them. The capitalization of the client names should be the same between all of them. The spelling dictionary that we use should be the same between all those departments. So when you make a style guide, you should make it specific to what your users need. What can you save arguments about? In fact, you could start with the 2 things that your team argues about and make a style guide and put it there. And you're going to start off by telling one style guide. I'll show you in a second. And then you could just put the 2 issues that really drive you crazy and say, put your foot down and say, here's how we do it. No more arguments on this issue. Post it in the coffee room. Okay, so some notes on formatting are also important in a style guide. So the formatting type notes that you would include line spacing, paragraph spacing, double spacing, headers. So here I made a little example. Here's a design mouse. So our designer mouse says, I am happy. I would love to teach you how to use our style guide. All you have to do is ask me, and I'll be so happy to teach you to use this template, right? So let's say that for this company, for header number 1, you put it all in bold purple Calibri, okay? And note that I don't just say purple, because I know I'm one of those people who can't really distinguish between the different purples on the screen, especially it depends if it's my screen or your screen or my screen or my second screen, the purples can look different. So it's very important to give a hex color, or there's some other ways to reference colors, but make sure that people know how to find those colors. Now, if you work in a big enough company, they probably hired a designer to make a template, and then you don't mess with the colors. You leave the colors that they have, because this is the kind of thing that can drive some of your clients crazy if you get it wrong. Most of us won't notice, but the ones who do might be the ones with the money. So you can just see here, we say the font size, the font type, the color, and then in the paragraphs here, body text, we put the spacing and we put how much space we're going to have between paragraphs. That's just one example of a template rules. It doesn't have to be complicated, it just has to be usable. So now I have an example at the end about getting buy-in from engineers and scientists. One of the things, and I've taught workshops on it with Editors Canada, is that humanities trained people often have difficulty talking to engineers and scientists about their style guides, because humanities-based people will just say, well, I learned it at university and it's a no-brainer, or whatever. And they're not very good at explaining the exact how, why, when, where, and really getting buy-in. And so this article that I wrote for the Society for Technical Communications, it's there. I also have this example at the end of the presentation. If we have time, I will go through it. But if not, you can go read the article for yourself. So now, buy-in from the users, I've already alluded to a couple times here. If you have solid guidelines, solid books that it's based on, and everybody can see your foundation, that's helpful. Depending on if you have a good hierarchy and good roles within your company, which I was really blessed with in the engineering department when I worked there, then it's pretty easy, because my boss just said, she knows what she's doing, you're following her rules. And that was kind of, easy for me, because people listen to him. But what if you have a team that's more collaborative? Then you're going to need to maybe have a team process, maybe get everybody around a table and say, hopefully lead them to the rules that you want. But I know there was also times when I worked at the engineering company that I had to back down on my reasoning, and I understood why they were doing their reasoning, either for client reasons or for engineering tradition, or for, there can be things. And to be a good team member, it's important to be flexible, have a good solid backbone of what you believe and what you know, but be willing to change if required. So now, interestingly, people object to having rules, which isn't that interesting. I object to rules too, unless they make sense. So I actually have a colleague, and she said that her place of work, they hired her to be an editor, but then they didn't want her to have any style guide or present any style rules for the team, because they thought they wouldn't be able to be agile enough, and it would slow them down too much, and they wouldn't have flexibility in what they wanted to do. And of course, it's true, the style guide reduces your flexibility. You can't goof around with the colors and the fonts. You can't goof around with the spelling, but that reduction in flexibility actually is usually quite a relief, right? It's like, think of it like this. You have a ladder instead of climbing a rock wall. Like, we all love to climb a rock wall when we have a chance, but a ladder is a lot faster and easier than climbing a rock wall. And sometimes if the team won't collaborate, then you need the manager mouse to say, people, these are the rules, the client agreed to them, the principals and associates agreed to them, and they are not open to negotiation. Deal with it. And this negotiation can take up oodles of time, as I've mentioned before. So depending on who you are, like, as I said, when I was in engineering, my boss, he'd been in the company for 35 years, and it was very easy for him to say, you guys must follow these rules. You might need to back yourself up more, unfortunately, with the rules and the clout and the solid guidelines to talk people into it. So now, standardized styles provide a great starting point. So I mentioned you could just write down 2 things that annoy you, and then you could say, and we follow this book or this webpage. Okay, so scientific style and format, Chicago Manual of Style, and the Termium, which is our Government of Canada webpage, are the 3 basic ones that I recommend for engineers and scientists. So Chicago Manual of Style is pretty much the standard manual for all of North America publishing. We follow most of that. There are other minor ones like the Medical Association and the APA, which is the Psychological Association, which have their applications, but basically for industrial writing and corporate writing, I would go Chicago Manual of Style, and most people would. So here's the Chicago Manual of Style website. And I put this up here, not just to show you how cute it is, but also to say that the Q&A here and the blog here, and the forum, people come and ask questions like, how do I deal with semicolons? Or, we have this issue at our work. This is a dispute. Can you please solve it? And the Chicago Manual of Style writers are often quite hilarious, and they pull no punches, and it's quite a pleasure to read this blog and the Q&A. So it's not just useful, but it can also be an amusing place to go if you're having a cranky day. So here's the Chicago Manual of Style contents. So I'm showing you this as this might be the style guide contents in your style guide. So they start off with the publishing process. So they explain to people, and I know in 1999, when I got hired to be an editor, I didn't know what an editor was at all. I had no idea. It was one of those stories. This book explains to you how many people there are in a publishing team, a lot, and how to avoid annoying each other by doing things correctly. Okay, and then they go through style and usage. So grammar, punctuation, spelling, how to name a boat, how to write a magazine title, numbers, abbreviations, languages other than English, how to set mathematics in the type, how to just set quotations. Okay, so all this kind of stuff that's not very exciting for most of us. If you have a book, you just do it and then you move on to something more interesting. So this is scientific style and format. And the first thing to notice is that these guys have hooked up with the Chicago Manual of Style. So you'll see they right here reference Chicago Manual of Style and the Q&A. Okay. So, and also if you pay for scientific style and format for your team, the online subscription, you also get access to Chicago Manual of Style. So these work really well together. Now, scientific style and format, I'm not expecting you to read this whole page, just hang on and listen. So scientific style and format is more specific to scientific and engineering applications. Okay, so just for an example, a few of the things that's new in the 8th edition and why you might want to have the online edition instead of having an old copy on the shelf is, major updates to matters concerning physics, chemistry, biological sciences, and astronomy, right? These things are changing. I know the genetics my son just learned in high school, totally different from what I learned in 1990, right? Changing in stylistic recommendations, consistent with international bodies, okay? You in your little office, your little corporate office, cannot keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in language internationally, but these style guides can, and then you only have to refer to this style guide. You don't have to keep your eye on all the international different conversations that are going on. Leave that to us editors, and you just get this guide. That's kind of how it works. So they also revised and reorganized numbers, units, math expressions, and statistics. So this is, basically the main reason. So the main reason that I would want you to get scientific style and format is going to be the math, statistics, and science. So you're going to see that the next slide. This slide, basically you're seeing the same units that the Chicago Manual of Style had. First of all, they talk about how does the publishing process work and how do you not annoy the other people in the publishing process. And then this part covers, the basics of how we're going to write things. Now, chapters 3 and 4 are what make it different. Not chapters, sections from Chicago Manual of Style. So special scientific conventions, the electromagnetic spectrum, subatomic particles, chemical formulas, lots of chemistry, love chemistry. Then they just, cover, for example, because I'm not a biologist, when I'm faced with environmental papers that have biological nomenclature, I need to go and maybe check how the species names are treated. And I can just go to scientific style and format and it's right there, correct. And I won't get it wrong. And then they cover technical elements of publications. So journal styles and formats, again, how to interact well and professionally with the other people in this industry. So the third and final style guide that I'm going to show you and recommend is Termium. I love Termium. It's fun. So what you do is you enter your term in here. Now, one thing is it's not Google. So when I wanted to show you Tuktoyaktuk, it took me 4 attempts to spell it. So, Google, you misspell it and then they'll say did you mean Tuktoyaktuk? So I meant Tuktoyaktuk, but Termium didn't help me spell it. I had to keep respelling it until I figured it out. But then once I figure it out, look at the cool stuff that they tell us, right? First of all, it's a place in the Northwest Territories. A lot of people call it Tuk. I know my dad had a job up there and that's what they called it, Tuk. It used to be called Port Brabant. So if you're looking at some old documents and you're wondering where Port Brabant is, then you can find out it's an old name for Tuktoyaktuk. And then it tells us it's a hamlet on the shore of the Beaufort Sea in the Inuvik regions. Like, for example, you might need to know, is it near Inuvik or is it in near Iqaluit? You know, this termium tells you. And then as you see, it has English, French, it often has Spanish, and they've also added Portuguese in certain places. I'm guessing probably maritime. I haven't had a chance to explore why that is. But so this is a very good place to go for geographical information. And then this is the bottom half of the termium page. I just wanted to show you what else is offered free from the Government of Canada, so free for your taxes. The language portal, writing tools, and glossaries and vocabularies. So if you're sitting around at work wanting to improve your language, these are good tools. Now, so let's say that you start and you tell people in your company that they're following scientific style and format. You can get a copy at Judy's desk. Judy's desk, you say that where Judy's desk is, or you say we have an online copy, please, you know, whoever has the login. So the first thing you're going to do is tell them that style guide, and then you're going to talk about the company formatting and styles and how to use it. And then you're going to deal with persistent, troublesome, or time-wasting issues. Okay. So dictionaries now I want to talk about. Microsoft Word often is set onto American, and people don't know, but you can put Microsoft Word in Canadian, which helps. But please don't believe that Microsoft Word is the absolute arbiter of grammar, because it isn't. It isn't. You are sometimes right and Microsoft Word is wrong, just so you know. Also, Grammarly is often wrong. Grammarly is very, very often wrong. It is not a dictionary, okay? Dictionaries, real dictionaries, are Merriam-Webster's if you're in the United States, Canadian Oxford if you're in Canada, the Macquarie Dictionary if you're in Australia, and then if you are anywhere in the Commonwealth, probably you could use the Oxford English Dictionary. However, Oxford Dictionary Company also has various African Englishes and Indian English. So the Oxford Dictionary Company, if you are working on international projects in English, would be where you would want to go to find out various spellings or various usages. They even have, I think Oxford has even been working on pidgin dictionaries. So various pidgins, depending where you are in the world, you know, whether it's Indonesia or I don't know very many places with pidgin, but I know there's lots of them around. I think there's some in Africa, but I might be wrong. Anyways, if you go to Oxford, you can find out more about that. Now I put, so BIPM is the Bureau International de Poids et Mesures.org. So you might know that, you know, metric started in France, and the big platinum measure that makes a kilogram and a meter and all that is in France. And that is the official website of them. So for example, that's the one I often link to show people that yes, there is a space in between the number and the unit in metric. So 2 space meter. Now, if people grew up with the imperial measurement system, they would know that you would say there's a 6-foot board with a hyphen, 6-foot board. In metric, you don't put the hyphen. A 2-meter board is a 6-foot board. See, they're different. Now, the blue one that's showing up there, NIST.gov, is actually an American metric reference, and it's very well done. It's very simply laid out. It shows how metric works, and they also have really good comparisons with how imperial works compared to how metric works. It's a beautiful resource, and you could print it out for anybody, old or young, at your company who is struggling with changing from imperial to metric, or even just how to use metric properly. So you don't have to write all these rules for your style guide. You can just tell people, here's the rules. These are the ones we agree to use. So now to finish off, I'm going to show you, this is a 2-page style guide done for a company by one of the students in the UBC course. She okayed us to use it. The red boxes are covering up her company details. So the first thing you see is that this is the BC Ministry of Forests. So first of all, she says, follow this style guide, this one right here, and she gives the link. So there's the basic set of rules. And then the next thing she says is, here's the things that we're having trouble with in our company, and here's how we do them. So anybody could print this out and put it on their cubicle. Easy, right? So nobody has any reason to make a mistake in, here we go, 10 space liter, 100 space kilometer, 3-foot. See right there. Now, an interesting one I find is the 5 to 10 degrees Celsius rise. Some people put a space between their degrees Celsius and some people don't. And I would say that this one is 50-50 on the fence with what's normal usage. So by metric, you could put a space if you want. And if you don't want to put a space, that's okay, but try to use it consistently. And if people are putting their tables and photos incorrectly, as you can see here, it can just cost so much time trying to reformat those documents. So let's just get it right in the beginning, and that can help. So the final message is that even if colleagues do not take up the style guide, there should be an authority at the end of the line before the client receives the reports that has the responsibility for polishing it and making it adhere to the style guide. So maybe not everybody on the team is going to read or understand or study the style guide, but one person at the end should have done so, and they are going to change things and fix them. And if everybody knows that that's going to happen, hopefully less people will spend time going back and forth, spending hours switching semicolons, and save some time and money. And that is about all I have to say. Please feel free to send me questions at any time, KristaBedwin@gmail.com, or find me through LinkedIn, Krista Bedwin. I'm the only one there. And I hope that this has been helpful to you.